Trevor, which would mean more to BYU athletics, a basketball win over a ranked San Diego State team or a football win at Cal to close out the regular season?
Well, football's kind of all set. I think the basketball win over a ranked team to help set them on their way and establish precedent for beating good teams would be the bigger thing. But still, basketball, I just don't understand it because the ball bounces funny, straight up and down. I mean, how do you have a sport with a goofy ball like that? So, even so, I think that goofy sport with the goofy ball has the bigger game, even though football's football, this is big for the football team as well.
I argued in favor of football because there's only 12 regular season games, whereas basketball, you have 31. BYU has several other opportunities. Now you're at the end of the season. I know Cal is 5-6, but they're so good on offense, and BYU struggled on defense. That would be a nice win at the end of the regular season.
It would be huge because Cal, you talk about good on offense, they are the second scoring offense in the Pac-12. Only Oregon scores more points than they do. They put up huge number of points. They put up 41 against Oregon, the second-ranked team in the country. They were over 30 against UCLA, a top 10 team. So this is a team that has proven it can score on the best defenses in the nation, and they need this win to be bowl eligible. So if BYU can beat Cal, it will be a fantastic win to cap the regular season and a quality win.
Trevor, what is the formula for BYU to go on the road and win at Berkeley on Saturday?
Make the score like a basketball score. You've got to.
So you give up 90?
Assume. Yeah. What's the over/under on the total cumulative score between the two basketball teams or the two football teams? If they're close, then BYU, that's their best chance to do it because as good as Cal's offense is, their defense is just as bad. It is the worst defense in the Pac-12, and BYU should be able to keep up with the scoring. What they'll need to do ultimately is sell out at the line of scrimmage to create pressure on the quarterback because if Jared Goff is able to stand back there and tee off, it'll be a long day for BYU.
Trevor, that's a legit question that you've made me think about now. Is could the football score be more than half of the basketball score?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's very possible that you'll see a score in the 90s in this football game between the two teams.
That'd be great.
Cumulative.
I'd love it.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be fun. It'll be basketball on grass, and maybe there'll be a lot of fouls in the basketball game, and it'll be football on hardwood.
I love it. Why is Cal, in your opinion, just a 3.5-point favorite over BYU right now? I assume that Cal would be a little higher.
Yeah, because of their defense. Cal has been losing a lot of very high-scoring games. I mean, they scored 41 on Oregon and lost. They were in the 30s against UCLA and lost. And so this is a team that even though their offense is that good, it doesn't mean that they have an edge to win a game.
They scored 45 against Arizona and lost. And so
right.
You make a great point there. BYU coming off the Savannah State game. We want to spend about 30 seconds talking about this.
Not much.
What can the Cougars take away from last Saturday's game?
Absolutely nothing. But you know what? That's okay. Because at the same time BYU played Savannah State, you had SEC powers playing the same kind of FCS opponent, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, etc. And the reason is that they want kind of a bye week before their big rivalry game that comes up this week. And BYU doesn't have that rivalry game, but the fact that this game is scheduled now to allow them to regroup for a big season finale against Cal, I'm fine with. And people that don't like scheduling Savannah State at this point, you know what? They can learn to love it. If you can't learn to love it, then cry it out, because BYU is not the only school that has a game or two like this.
Yeah, it happens. And let us acknowledge that this would be the week if BYU and Utah had a regular relationship, that they would play the game. Oh, that'd be something to play for.
Well, but see, Utah, bless Utah's heart. If they don't want to play BYU, I understand. BYU's ready for them, and they're off doing something else. So, okay.
Why wouldn't they want to play a team they've beaten 4 times? You know what I mean? Like, they have nothing to lose in that. That's probably another conversation. But next year, BYU, this week's game next year is Utah State. I think that's a nice move on BYU's part.
You know what? And the kindling of that rivalry with Chucky Keaton and what they've been able to do up at Utah State, that rivalry is back in a big way, and I like that. That's good for football in the state.
Yeah, the Aggies are 9-3. Let's go national perspective now, Trevor. With the college football playoff rankings, Alabama 1, Oregon 2, Florida State 3, Mississippi State 4. All 4 teams won. Florida State somehow, some way survived again. They do it again and win by a field goal over Boston College. Do you see any changes in the top 4 this week?
I don't know that there'll be big changes in the top four. I think the big changes will come after the conference championship games are played, because that's one criterion that is going to be very important. And right now, Mississippi State fans had better not get too comfortable with their team at number 4 and in the playoffs if the season ended right now. The reason is that under the old system with the polls and the BCS, typically if you didn't lose, it was very hard for someone to jump over you. But now with a huge, important factor to be factored in, who wins conference championships, and what will that mean to Mississippi State if Alabama wins out and Mississippi State is a runner-up in the SEC West because of that, then that will be whiplash and great gnashing of teeth among Bulldog fans, because it will be a completely new way for the postseason to be ushered in terms of rankings.
Yeah, I love it, and it's going to be interesting the next couple of weeks. In fact, I think my wife wanted to have plans in 2 weeks, the championship Saturday. I was like, don't worry about it. There are some games that we have got to watch, and it's going to be good. And one of those includes BYU at Weber State and hoops. But what's more likely, Trevor, that Ohio State or TCU/Baylor get into the playoff?
No, I think the most likely thing is Ohio State. The reason is that the committee has been disrespectful of Baylor, it seems to me, primarily because of their non-conference schedule. They played basically for Savannah State. It's not quite that bad, but it looks that way to the committee. And because of that, even though they have the same record as TCU, even though they beat TCU head-to-head for the entire period of ranking since October 28th, the committee has had TCU ranked ahead of the Baylor team that won the head-to-head matchup. So Ohio State is in a good situation for two reasons. One is that Minnesota is ranked and continues to win. And Ohio State beat Minnesota a couple of weeks ago. And that's good for Ohio State, that the strength of schedule is boosted by the Gophers. I mean, that's the goofiest thing in the world when you think about it, but it's happening. And then you've also got Wisconsin, with Melvin Gordon as a legitimate Heisman candidate at running back. Wisconsin playing its best football of the year. It looks like they'll face Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. That will give Ohio State the potential for another big splashy win if they're able to pull it off. That's something that I think the committee will value.
You've been very vocal about the criteria that go into this, Trevor. How do you feel about how things have gone in the inaugural year of the college football playoff with the committee and how they're handling things?
Well, I'm severely bugged because of inconsistencies, because of the way that they're valuing different criteria. And this is their first year, and so I understand that. I mean, they're trying to get this bucket of bolts assembled into a well-oiled machine, and they haven't done it yet. And so I give them the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, the Final Four teams in football won't be determined on the field by the players so much as who wins the debate in the committee room over which criteria have the most weight, because those criteria are often at odds with each other. For example, people think it's easy just to say, well, have the best 4 teams. Well, that's nice, but how do you define that?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, you might think that Team A is the better team on the field than Team B. But Team B, with the same record, because of the way their schedule shook out, they had more opportunities to beat more ranked teams, and so they have a better body of work. But you think Team A would beat them on the field, so which do you value more, the better team or the better resume? And so you have a conflict. There's a real-world conflict, though, that we can talk about, and that is the Baylor-TCU situation. Baylor beat TCU head-to-head. TCU, coming into this week, is ranked ahead of Baylor. Part of the reason for that, the big reason for that, is that the non-conference schedule for Baylor is terrible, and the non-conference schedule for TCU included a decisive win over that Minnesota team that is ranked. So I think that no matter what happened with the rest of the schedule, if the records are the same, and you played head-to-head, the team that won it on the field should be ranked higher. But the committee seems to think that head-to-head is only one game. Body of work is all of your games, and they value all of the games as a group more than just that one head-to-head. Now, I think that philosophy is completely nuts. But you can see that whoever wins the debate over which of those two criteria are valued the most, that will determine whether TCU or Baylor is ranked higher if both of them win out. And so it's not so easy just to say, well, give me the best team. Because how you define best team based on criteria is a very subjective thing.
Yeah, that's where the human element just makes it kind of mind-boggling when you look at it,
But
Trevor.
it's better than computers determining that, but it's not exactly correct.
There's no
right?
perfect
Well,
system.
people program computers, so at least with people, you know who to be mad at. With a computer, how do you get mad at a computer? You pour coffee on the keyboard, I guess. If you did that to a human committee member, you'd be arrested. So at least you have that going for you.
And on this program, you would pour Postum, right?
Yeah, correct. Piro or Postum or hot chocolate.
That's a very good point, because computers are bound by the word of wisdom if they want to perform at the
Yes, they
highest
are.
level.
Only on BYU TV and BYU Radio. Trevor, what? Jinx 1, 2, 10.
Yes.
Florida State plays Florida. They will win that game, and then they play Georgia Tech. Is there any way that Florida State is not in the playoff?
I think they'll make it, but don't be so sure that they'll win both of those games. I think they probably will, but look at this. Boston College pounded them on the ground. They ran the ball 51 times and almost won the game running the ball down Florida State's throat. Florida State pulled it out in the end. Okay, good for them. But now they're facing a Florida team that can't pass the ball very well, but they run the ball very, very well. Keep in mind that Florida pasted Georgia. In that game, Florida ran the ball 60 times, only threw it 6. And they still blasted Georgia, even though Georgia, with a better defense, I believe, than Florida State, or at least a very good defense at Georgia, but not better, but certainly very good. They knew what was coming, and they couldn't stop it. Well, that's what Florida will try to do to Florida State. Also keep in mind that with Will Muschamp, the Florida coach, now fired. He's going to coach out the season, and that's it. These Florida players love him, and they will fly around like crazy with absolutely nothing to lose. Muschamp is a defensive coach. He will pull every trick out of his playbook to throw at Florida State. So there's all kinds of reasons that that's a dangerous game for Florida State. And you start with the fact that they're beaten and battered from having to defend 51 rushing plays and not very well against Boston College the week before. Then, if they're able to survive that, they play a Georgia Tech team that might have the best rushing attack in the nation, but now this is a triple option. And now, after having faced, a battering from BC and Florida, Florida State's going to have to deal with Georgia Tech. So there's no guarantee that Florida State is going to win out. And if they don't, if Florida State loses a single game, there's a very good chance they will not make the playoff, because they have not controlled games this season. They have just managed to eke out a win week after week after week.
Trevor Matich of ESPN on BYU Sports Nation. Trevor, there are a number of people across BYU Sports Nation, really at all levels throughout the program, that are interested in what is going to happen with the Big 12 and this college football playoff. Because they don't have a championship game, do you see any chance that a team like Baylor or TCU gets into the top 4 for the playoff?
There's a very good chance of that. But I think they would have the benefit of the doubt against them if it came down to a one-loss Big 12 champ against a one-loss, say, Ohio State. Because 12-1 with that extra championship game looks better than 11-1. So that would be, a situation, I think, a nightmare situation for the Big 12. Although that doesn't necessarily guarantee that the Big 12 would expand to try to get a conference championship game. The Big 12 is very happy to have only 10 teams instead of 14 that the SEC and ACC and Big 10 have, because they're dividing all that TV money only 10 ways instead of 14. So they're making out like bandits financially. Well, they will try to get the NCAA to waive the requirement that you must have at least 6 teams in 2 divisions in order to play a conference championship game. Because they could play a conference championship game with 2 divisions of 5 teams each if the NCAA waives that requirement. If they do, then the Big 12 can have their cake and eat it too. They can still divide their money only 10 ways, but they can't have that 13th game, the conference championship game. So it'll be very interesting to see if it comes to a ruling by the NCAA, what that ruling is, because it directly affects whether or not the expansion might occur. And if it does, BYU will have their hat in the ring.
Trevor, always great to talk to you. A fantastic insight into the college football playoff and what's happening in the inaugural season. We'll talk to you again soon, and be sure to watch BYU Cal closely, because we're coming hard next week.
Yeah, baby, I'm there.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Trevor.